American writer and frontiersman Elbert Hubbard said, "Responsibility is the price of freedom." If you had to choose freedom-loving leaders for our country, would you choose weak, undisciplined, fearful snowflakes on college campuses? Who need therapy goats in a safe space? Who are afraid to hear a different opinion and are ill-equipped to publicly debate, instead shouting down others to squelch free speech? Who rely on the government for everything, including college, healthcare, and even how to think? Or would you want frontier, freedom-loving Americans who are courageous, optimistic, patriotic, resourceful, self-sufficient, and self-governed, who are open to debating both sides of the issues, and who can guide our country back on track for good? Our country needs a recovery of the spirit of the American West, self-governance, and frontier freedom. On my first day of homeschooling, when I was 5 years old, I had to learn how to be self-governed. I had to know how to start my tasks quickly and finish on time. If I didn't want a ruler, I had to know how to govern and control myself. Today, first, I'll be addressing what is poisoning our culture right now, and second, how we can restore our faith, family, and freedom using the ideals of the frontiersmen of the American West. So first, one of those things that's poisoning our country today is that we've seen the abandonment of this idea of self-governance. Our country is seeing an infiltration of Marxist ideology in our churches, media, schools, our big corporations, big tech, and culture. We're seeing a decline in morality because of this stew of wokeness, intersectional ideology, critical race theory, left-wing social justice, and transgenderism. We're also seeing a major disrespect for an originalist interpretation of our Constitution. Virtue is lacking because of a loss of belief in the scriptures and an exchange of trust in God with the poisonous substitute of intrusive, micromanaging, and burdensome government. No wonder we're seeing so many snowflakes on college campuses today. Certain schools are now saying that even things like grading English papers and grading math is racist. A chart from the National Museum of African American History and Culture says that there was a list of qualities that were bad and considered to be white supremacy. They were self-reliance, decision-making, being polite, being on time, having a hard work ethic, having delayed gratification, and the nuclear family. Certain people in left-wing schools are saying that people of color can't have any of these characteristics. But how racist is that? This is a perfect example of the bigotry of low expectations. What do you think would happen if the Tuskegee Airmen, for example, didn't have any of these traits? Or what about people like Justice Thomas, Thomas Sowell, or Ben Carson? Did they exhibit these traits? Every successful person of any ethnicity has had these traits. Besides seeing a decline in morality and also a lack of individual responsibility, we're also seeing something poisoning our culture called therapeutic totalitarianism, which comes from Rod Dreher's book, Live Not by Lies. This term basically just means that the government does everything for us under the guise of our health and our safety, and it's always done under a supposed emergency. It's that classic dilemma of freedom versus security, where security always wins in the end. In Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, he says to never waste a good crisis, and that's exactly how it plays out with therapeutic totalitarianism. After 9/11, the government set up the Transportation Security Administration. This was done under an emergency, but here we are today, 20 years later, still having it, and it's considered totally normal. With the mismanagement of the COVID crisis, we've seen the government completely handle poorly the situation. We've seen them cancel funerals and weddings, take parents with 2-year-old children who didn't want to wear a face mask off of planes and forcefully remove them, and also we've seen them arrest lone windsurfers out in the middle of the ocean. This cancel culture that's happened because of this COVID mismanagement has gone out of control. My mother was taken off of Facebook for 3 months, And even I've experienced it as an outspoken Christian conservative journalism student at the University of Central Florida. It has gone on for far too long. We've seen a blind compliance and acquiescence of spineless Americans. Where are the frontier, freedom-loving Americans? Daniel Boone was an early American hero who definitely didn't fit any of these things. He had tons of grit. He was captured by the Shawnees and escaped, had his own daughter kidnapped, was shot in the ankle, and had 10 kids. Not 5, 10 kids. When he was asked what the perfect ingredients to a happy life were, he said, a good gun, a good horse, and a good wife. If a modern-day snowflake were to come up to Daniel Boone and complain about the government not providing their health care or not giving them a therapy goat, I think Daniel Boone would have laughed in their face. Enough with these weaklings. The early pioneers didn't need the government to help them. All they had was grit and optimism. They had to face harsh conditions like diseases like cholera, dysentery, and typhoid fever, ice-cold winters, prairie fires, and confrontation with the Indians. Children learned to shoot when they were only 5 or 6. They knew that they wanted to embrace their Second Amendment right to bear arms, freedom of religion, freedom of speech, freedom of assembly, and also privacy from the government. They assessed massive risks for their families, and they decided at the end it was all worth it. Frederick Jackson Turner was famous for something called his frontier thesis. According to an article called How the Frontier Shaped the American Character from AmericanHeritage.com, Turner believed that the mobility, optimism, inventiveness, and innovation of the early Americans were frontier traits. He believed that the pioneers were known for their willingness to move over and over again, and they viewed the world through rose-colored lenses. They also were known for a distinctive brand of individualism and didn't want the government coming in and intruding on their economic functions, which made them unique. Americans need to stop being lethargic and politically disengaged and get a backbone. Stop acting like the government can do everything for us and fix all our problems. We need a culture shift. So, to help us do that, here are some action steps we can take. Number 1, parents, teach your children to be self-governed. Number 2, work hard like the frontiersmen and get some grit like Daniel Boone. Number 3, vote for politicians who want limited government and who will also uphold our First Amendment liberties and our Bill of Rights. And number 4, do not remain silent. Speak up about this with your friends and family, even if it has ramifications at your job. Make sure that you don't quit and you don't kowtow to the left on this issue. As Edmund Burke once said, the only thing necessary for the triumph of evil is for good men to do nothing. And as Lynn Nofziger said, freedom is our most precious commodity, and if we are not eternally vigilant, the government will take it away. To echo something I said earlier, individual freedom demands individual responsibility, and the frontiersmen had these traits. Martin Niemöller said, "First, they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak up because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak up because I was not a Jew. And then last of all, they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." My prayer is that one day I will have children of my own, and I pray that they will have the same freedoms that I had growing up. But one thing I know is that if they do not, it will not be because I did not speak up. In Rod Dreher's book, Live Not by Lies, he says, under the right conditions, yes, therapeutic totalitarianism can happen in America. It won't happen in the same way as in Russia and Eastern Europe. The parallels between a declining United States and a pre-revolutionary Russia are not exact, but they are unnervingly close. Totalitarianism can come to America if we do not take action now. So let's go back to the frontier. Today's modern-day snowflakes are debating which pronouns to use, but I don't think Daniel Boone had time for that when he was grappling with grizzly bears or trying to figure out how to cross icy rivers. Instead, let's go back to that American spirit of hard work ethic, morality, and self-governance, and let's get back to that American frontier freedom. Thank you.